start and have at least a couple balls of clay wedged, ready to go. So I've got my tools, my water, and my bucket. I want to be adding as I go water, just enough water. But I'm going to need the most water at the beginning. So when I'm centering my clay, which is my very first thing I do on the wheel, centering, I will use the most water and the most speed. So I'm going to go the fastest I ever go and the most water I ever use. To get my clay stuck to the wheel initially, some people like to kind of throw it down onto the wheel head. You don't have to do that. You could just set it there and kind of like pat it down. The very first thing before you center, you're going to actually, with the wheel spinning, you're going to press it down into the wheel head. So that should make it stick. So my wheel, if I'm right-handed, which I am, should be spinning counterclockwise. So most of you will want your wheels in reverse, which would be counterclockwise. You want to sit really close to the wheel, and you want to be a tiny bit higher than the wheel head. So I set my speed and I take my foot off of the pedal. Then my first step will be to compress the clay down, and I need to use water here, so I'm going to get water with my sponge. And then I'm going to compress the clay down with the side fist of my right hand. My left hand will be wrapped around the clay here, and mostly for support, so I'm not pushing in yet with my left hand at all. Just going to hold that there. My right hand will be braced against it, so they'll be touching, and then I'll be pressing down. Okay, so I'm going to add water, and then press down. So you can see it's really wobbly. That is not centered. So centered will be where it spins and it almost looks like it's not spinning. So that compression made it stick to the wheel. Okay, next step would be for centering is I'm going to use my left hand, this part of my left hand, and my hand's going to be wrapped around the clay, but that's where my pressure is going to be, is right there. My left elbow is planted in my body, and I'm going to be leaning into the clay with my body. So I'm not using my arms. I'm not pushing on the clay with my arms. I am leaning into the clay with my body. So my right hand is controlling the shape on the top. So I'm going to be pushing kind of down and in on the side with my right fist, my sideways fist. Okay, so elbow braced, left hand in position, and then I lean in with my left. And I'm kind of pushing in more to the top to get this cone shape, because what I want to do is cone the clay. And push in and more toward the top, so my left hand is actually kind of like that. So I can push it up into this cone, and this is going to get rid of lumps in the clay. And then I'm going to push this back down with my right hand, back into that centering position. And now my sideways fist again. And that gets rid of those lumps. Okay, so to see if it's centered, if you hold your hand or your finger out still, it should touch consistently. It shouldn't be wobbling back and forth at all. Anytime I go to touch the clay or come away from the clay, I want to do that very slowly. So if I am centering, let's say, and it's like, oh, I got it centered, and then I go like that, really fast. You see what happened to the clay? Now it's wobbling again. So I threw it off center. So anytime I get it centered, I let go, let up pressure really slowly, and then it will stay centered. Next step will be opening up the middle. I use my thumbs to do this. You could use your fingertips. A lot of people use their fingertips this way. You can do whatever works well for you. So with both hands wrapped around and my elbows in real close, I kind of start depressing this down in the middle with both my thumbs. And my thumbs are very flat. I'm just kind of making a little tiny crater. You'll find once you start opening up, the inside of the clay is a lot drier than the outside is, so you have to add more water as you go to open up this inside. Okay, and then I'm going to keep going down, keeping my thumbs together. My thumbs will end up kind of turning in toward each other as I go down, and they'll like that. keep going down. Again, my hands wrapped around the outside, my elbows braced. And another thing to note is that I am still going really fast at this point. I don't want to go all the way through the bottom, obviously. I want to leave a base there. So if I'm not sure if I've gone far enough, the way to check is I soaked up the water, there's no water in there, stopped my wheel, take my needle tool, stick it down until it hits the wheel head, and then I'm going to grab my needle tool to pull it out, but I'm going to push my finger right up against the edge of the clay and hold it there, and then pull it out, and I can see from my finger to the end of the needle tool is how thick it is. Okay, so now I've opened it up. If I feel like things start to get a little off-center at any point from now, the best thing to do is to, I got this kind of donut shape going right now, wrap both hands around and wrap your thumbs over the top and just kind of squeeze that back down together like centering. Okay, now I'm going to widen the bottom of this. So I'm going to put my left hand inside, my right hand wrapped around the outside, and my fingertips are going to sweep across the bottom to widen that out. Because right now it's like a tube, and I want to make the bottom a lot wider, like a disc at the bottom. So your hands will look almost like a butterfly right now. So my right hand around the outside, my left hand over that. But what my hands are doing is right hand around the outside, left finger's inside, my fingers are literally just sweeping across the bottom, going straight across. So I'm making that inside at the bottom flat and wider. Okay, now at this point I want to slow down a little. I want to make sure my walls are always lubricated, but I don't ever want to puddle in the bottom anymore. Okay, now the process will be pulling up the walls. Right now, if I cut this in half, it would look like a little cylinder, but it would have really thick walls. And so I'm going to gradually work on getting those thinned out. My position for this should be left hand inside, right hand outside. No longer wrapped around the clay like I was a minute ago. Now I'm going to be fingertips opposite each other, pointing downward. Hands braced together at the top. And if this were a clock, I would be around 5 or 6 o'clock. So the closest I can be to my body. So think I want to be very secure and braced, and that's going to be the best place. Okay, so right hand outside, and I actually kind of, I almost like pinch the clay. I don't know that my thumb really does much there, but I guess more for support. My thumb is on the outside and my finger's on the inside with my left hand. And then my hands are braced together at the top here. My right hand fingers are pressing in. So that was one pass, and I go back down and do that pass again. Okay, so another pass, again, just this pressure between outside and inside. The rim, a lot of times when I get to the top, I don't pinch this all the way to the top. I don't want that to go too thin. And if I feel like it starts to, sometimes I'll wrap like my thumb or my knuckle around it and just kind of round that out and make sure it stays. You want to have a strong lip rim, so you don't want it too thin. As you start to get thinner with your walls, this is when I slow down a little bit more. So I'll maybe go down to like 30% speed or so. As I go though, you will notice this, that it stays a lot thicker at the bottom, so you have to consciously think, okay, I've got to pull more pressure at the bottom and less pressure as I go up. So it's like most of my pressure is going to be at the very bottom, and then as I get about halfway, I start letting up. When I get toward the top, I'm like barely pressing together at all. Notice the speed at which I myself am moving my hands. So your thickness you're trying to go for about, I would say, is that 1/4 inch thickness. Trying to keep your walls straight, trying to be very slow with this and controlled. When I get to this point, my wall thickness is pretty much at the right thickness except for at the very bottom. So I'm going to do a few pulls where I just pull and I basically have no pressure once I get to like right there.